Case featuring the craziest twists you have ever heard. Michaela Garecht case. Authorities ultimately apprehended David Misch and charged him with kidnapping and murder more than 30 years after Michaela Joy Garecht was taken in her hometown, Hayward, California. Welcome to Unsolved Crimes, where we feature cold cases, twisted cases, and solved cases from around the world. If you like to watch similar contents, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications to watch our latest episodes. In this episode, we are going to take a look at the heartbreaking kidnapping case of 9-year-old Michaela Garecht. Stay tuned and let's begin. We have all experienced the sense of being in a waiting situation. The stress and anticipation can be unbearable, but on November 1, 1988, Sharon Murch experienced this awful feeling to a degree that most parents couldn't even fathom. When her husband entered the room and instructed her to dial 911, she was still standing in her kitchen cleaning the dishes from breakfast that morning. Her daughter had gone missing. After 32 years of that dreadful waiting, justice would finally be partially satisfied, but Sharon Murch would never again be able to hold her newborn. Michaela Garecht was thoughtful for a 9-year-old. She was a cheerful and optimistic young girl, but she also seemed to have a profound understanding of the importance of life, which astonished her mother. In order to get some snacks and beverages, Michaela Garecht and her friend Katrina Rodriguez decided to ride their scooters to the market on the first day of the Thanksgiving vacation in California. Although Michaela had previously visited with older friends and it was only 2 blocks from their Hayward, California home, Sharon Murch wasn't sure about this. It wouldn't be far and the 2 girls would be together. What could possibly go wrong? They hadn't been gone long when her husband, who was at the time working on the car in the garage, hurried inside and uttered the words any mother dreads hearing. At the market, someone grabbed Michaela. He instructed her to dial 911 while also stating that he was headed to the market. The operator recognized Sharon without her having to provide any additional information, according to Sharon's account in a blog she maintains. Already on the phone was the market grocer's employee. In order to get all the facts and learn what she needed to do, Sharon was compelled to just wait until an officer arrived. Michaela couldn't have been found at that time because there was no technology or alarm system. As her beloved daughter was taken unknowingly distant from her, Sharon felt powerless to stop it. Without a doubt, the store clerk's wrong description of someone else who had been there had an impact on the search. This wrong description was being circulated during these crucial first 48 hours when knowledge and searching are so important. Michaela's friend Katrina, who was the sole witness, had a different version. She explained what had occurred that awful Saturday morning. The 2 girls had taken their scooters and had successfully arrived at the market. After purchasing their snacks, they exited the store, leaving their scooters by the door, but they completely forgot about them. Michaela's scooter had been relocated when the girls turned around to go fetch them. The scooter was lying on its side a few parking spaces away, close to a battered old automobile. The car had a dented front end and what happened to be semen splatters on the side, giving the appearance that it had been in an accident. Michaela went over to her scooter to pick it up, but as she stooped over to grasp the handle, a man sprang out of the car and grabbed her by the waist. He dragged her into the car and sped off as she started to scream. Without having enough time to take action, Katrina watched in horror as her friend cried and attempted to escape her captor. She hurried into the store and notified the employee, who promptly dialed 911. However, this is where the cashier provided a false description. Later, Katrina was able to provide an accurate one. He was a young man in his 20s who abducted Michaela, who was 9. He was tall and lean, with dark blonde hair that fell to his shoulders. His eyes were fox-like, Katrina recalled, and she also recalled that his face was scarred and covered with acne. Young Michaela was sought after by the police and FBI, who looked everywhere they could imagine she may be. Over vast uninhabited spaces like fields and parks, helicopters and other aircrafts flew. As word of the incident circulated through the media, her picture appeared on milk cartons as well as other missing person flyers, signs and billboards in an effort to locate her. The San Francisco 49ers Joe Montana even made an open appeal. Over 5,000 tips about the kidnapping had been given to the authorities by the end of December, but they were still unable to locate the victim. A reward of $70,000 was offered by the family to encourage anyone with information to come forward and provide it. The family also enlisted the aid of volunteers and distributed over 42,000 flyers. Sharon pursued leads of her own, traveling as far as Russia. She fastened ribbons to a tree close to the scene of Michaela's abduction. She dropped into the police station where they were cramming filing cabinets with evidence. In the past, Sharon recalled that each drawer was marked with a picture of a young girl rather than a case number. My little girl. Sharon held on to her hope that Michaela would be discovered alive as the years went by. She would compose a poem a week before she was taken away. Michaela, at the time, said to her mother, "It's not about the people who were kidnapped and killed. It's about individuals who were kidnapped and are being held captive." This poem struck Sharon as a sort of prophecy or premonition, according to her. Michaela was abducted in the same year as Amber Schwartz. Another young woman was abducted in Pinole a few months earlier. Time Bibner developed an unusual interest in the investigation and was soon labeled as a suspect. Police suspected a connection between the two kidnappings because of how closely they occurred. He was made a suspect in the disappearances of two more girls the following year, in 1989 from Dublin, California, and another in 1991 from Fairfield. He developed an odd interest in these inquiries and began to involve himself in the events that put him in the public eye. He was never detained or charged, albeit there was no proof of his involvement in these abductions. The scooter that had been left behind in the parking lot yielded a partial palm print that the police were able to obtain, but they had no other prints to compare it to. The search came up empty, and none of the suggestions led in many directions. Throughout it all, Sharon searched for her daughter and inquired about her whereabouts, listening for any encouraging news. For the next 4 years, she would wait before an unexpected confession gave her new hope of learning Michaela's fate. A prisoner in Indiana who had previously denied burying Michaela's remains did so in December of that year. She had been buried in San Francisco, according to this prisoner, Roger Haggard. He rapidly adjusted his story to take place in a different Union City location when the investigators pressed him with further inquiries. Sadly, Sharon would not find the closure she had hoped for at this point. The inmate acknowledged he had made the entire story up after bringing Haggard to the spot he had supposed to be and looking for 8 hours. Michaela's mother was pushed back to the beginning of her search for information as a result of him having his sentence lengthened. When J.C. Lee Dugard, who had been held captive by Philip Garrido for 18 years, was discovered alive in 2009, Sharon's optimism was restored. "And I leaped up yelling, 'Oh my God,'" Sharon told CNN. "I was of course joyful for JC herself, but my first thought was, please God, let Michaela be with her." Some aspects of the abductions were identical, such as the fact that both girls were abducted in broad daylight and from a nearby car that departed the scene right afterwards. Could it be possible that Michaela was also taken by Philip Garrido? When JC was discovered, Michaela wasn't the only person who came to mind besides Sharon. When Katrina saw Garrido on the television, she immediately recognized him as the man who had kidnapped her companion. Sharon was approached once more by the police, who wanted to know what Michaela had been wearing the day she vanished. Regrettably, no connection was found between Michaela and Garrido. This turned out to be a dead end as well. Again, Sharon Murch was left in the dark because there was no way to draw a connection between Garrido and Michaela's case. Even though J.C. Dugard's finding brought Michaela's case back into the public and police's attention after more than 20 years, she was still unsure of what had happened to Michaela. Several years later, in August 2012, Wesley Shermantine, one of the speed freak killers, revealed a shocking revelation in a letter to the Stockton Record newspaper. He remarked on how much Lauren Herzog resembled Katrina Rodriguez's account of Michaela's kidnapper, who had just committed suicide. Herzog had been his partner and had recently left him. The speed freak killers concealed their remains in a well, and when police inspected it, they discovered bone fragments that might have belonged to young Michaela Garecht. Was Sharon going to learn what had happened to her daughter at last? Her expectations were once again dashed by DNA testing, which determined that these bits weren't from the lost girl. A pair of Mary Jane shoes, the same style Michaela wore the day she was abducted, were discovered in the well though. It appeared that Michaela's mystery would never be definitively solved, despite all the police and volunteer efforts, as well as the family's tenacious and dedicated efforts to gather information. Although there was no concrete evidence, many people who were familiar with the case believed that they had the answers. Sharon believed that her child might never receive justice, and she had exhausted all possibilities in her arduous search. Sharon relocated from California to a small town in Iowa after receiving the news that she had breast cancer, an inoperable form of the disease, and other health problems. She had to have experienced unfathomable sadness leaving behind the location where Michaela was abducted and where she had grown up, not knowing what had happened to her daughter. When Amanda Berry, who had been abducted in 2003, escaped from Ariel Castro's house in Cleveland, Ohio in 2013, she was carrying her 6-year-old daughter. This gave Sharon a new hope. Michelle Knight and Gina DeJesus were two more girls who Castro had abducted and imprisoned for 10 years. Sharon guessed that Michaela might have a child of her own and be in a scenario resembling Amanda's. At the time, Sharon told CNN, "If Michaela is still alive and out there, I'd be amazed if she wasn't a mother herself. It's possible that being a mother will keep her from escaping and returning home. It's the only thing I can think of that makes sense." After 32 years had passed since Michaela vanished, authorities received a lead in 2020 that put them in a new direction. When the 30th anniversary of Michaela's kidnapping came around later that year, Hayward police made the decision to re-examine her case. They created a list of probable kidnappers and gave it to their fingerprint examiner so she could match the prints on the scooter with those on the list. Misch was one of the individuals on the list. In March 2018, a guy by the name David Misch was accused of killing Michelle Xavier and Jennifer Dewey in a cold case. In 1986, the closest friends were raped, stabbed, and shot in Fremont, California. DNA proof connected Misch to the crime. Misch had been incarcerated since 1989 for the murder of Hayward resident Margaret Ball. When authorities compared David Misch's palm print to a portion of the one taken from Michaela's scooter, he was already behind the bars for 2 prior offenses. The prints, in spite of their age and state, matched David Misch, and a witness was able to identify him as being close to the market shop on the day of the kidnapping. Sharon was able to get some answers after authorities were able to charge someone in the kidnapping of young Michaela. However, not every query had been addressed. Misch has steadfastly defended his innocence in the face of overwhelming evidence and allegations stemming from additional offenses. The whereabouts of Michaela's body was still a mystery to her parents. They were unaware of what transpired during those brief minutes of her life. These queries might never have an answer, which is both fortunate and tragic. Even while they will never fully understand the atrocities Michaela experienced, the imagined horrors, and the years of raising hopes only to have them crushed, have left them with wounds that will never fully heal. All that Michaela's parents can do is make the most of things. Tony Chaplin, the police chief, described it as bittersweet, but for the family, I think it is a point of closure for them. He added, "You always hope these things turn out differently than they do." One method Michaela's mother has done throughout the years is by founding a blog called Seeker's Road, where she talks about what occurred and writes letters to her missing daughter. Her blog has aided many who are coping with comparable circumstances and has helped many people become aware of the problems with abduction case procedures. It has been incredibly distressing to follow Sharon's letters to her daughter over the years and to see her everlasting devotion to Michaela while not knowing for sure whether she was still alive. One day, hopefully, the truth will come to light and justice will be served for the young girl who was cruelly taken from her by a wicked man. Michaela, I am so sorry, baby girl. I feel as though I let you down in a million ways. I was listening to Rescue by Lauren Daigle yesterday. This has been my song for you, and I broke down because I had not been able to rescue you. Because I had never ever been able to rescue you. You were a light to all who knew you when you were here in the world. And you have been a light even to strangers beyond number since you have been gone. We will try to keep that light shining for you. Sharon Murch on Seekers Road, December 2020. In a statement, Sharon explained that in the previous year she had arrived at a conclusion that Michaela was most likely no longer alive. But somehow that acceptance was far more wrapped up in the idea of Michaela sitting on fluffy pink clouds, walking streets of gold, dancing on grassy hills, soaring among the stars, she said. What I did not envision was my daughter as a dead child. It was only when I heard this news that this vision of reality appeared, and I honestly have not figured out what to do with it. Sharon was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer last year. Although she claims it is incurable, she is now undergoing therapy. I love you forever, baby girl, she wrote on her blog recently. Rest well. I have some things to do here yet, but I will see you in the not terribly distant future. Just recently, a judge thinks alleged Bay Area serial killer may not have acted alone. Terrible details of infamous killings are disclosed in the David Misch saga. The families of the 3 East Bay homicide victims, including a 9-year-old girl who was kidnapped and slain, gave compelling and moving evidence that marked the conclusion of a 3-decade wait to confront the man accused of these murders. The 9-year-old Hayward girl's best friend was one of the witnesses who looked the alleged Bay Area serial killer David Misch in the eyes. She said in court, "They remind me of the kidnapper's eyes." Please let us know what you think in the comment section below. And please like and share the video if you want to see more such true crime content. Make sure to subscribe to our channel. We hope to see you in our next video.